Good evening and a warm welcome to everyone to the fifth episode of the Vidya Knowledge series. I am Binaz Mehta, member of the Executive Board of Vidya and a practicing solicitor by profession. Vidya's journey started 35 years back with just 5 women at an IIT campus, and today with our powerful mantra, educate, empower, transform. Vidya has 74 live projects across India and has enhanced lives of over 375,000 underprivileged children and women. The Vidya Knowledge series resonates Vidya's ideology of holistic development and equipping its beneficiaries with important life skills. Today's webinar is a riveting panel discussion on violence against women. While COVID-19 is happening now, domestic violence has been a pandemic which has been simmering throughout the world for the longest time. The economic and mental stress brought forth by the COVID pandemic has further led to a dramatic surge in violence against women. Unfortunately, the threat looms largest where women should be and feel the safest at their own homes. Recent United Nations statistics show that a third of women around the world have experienced some form of violence in their lives. According to the World Health Organization, countries are reporting up to a 60% increase in emergency calls by women subjected to violence by their intimate partners in April this year as compared to last year. Though many countries, including India, have robust laws against violence against women, the often mooted question is the legal system effective enough to protect them? Today's focus is to try and build confidence that help is out there. All you need to do is reach out. With this thought in mind, I would like to introduce our moderator for today. Our moderator, Ms. Sashi Rajamani, a founding member of Social Venture Partners, a network of philanthropists who give their time and money to socially impactful initiatives. She works with multiple NGOs in different avatars, which span across civic issues, inclusivity, education, crafts, economic empowerment of vulnerable youth, and trafficked women in shelter homes. On to our panelists now in no particular order. Dr. Ms. Iram Ahmadi, who is the founding member and managing trustee of Bembala Foundation and a practicing psychological counselor since the past 22 years. She has extensive multicultural experience working with both an adult and geriatric population, marital and family therapy. She practices a client-centric approach in individual sessions. Kiran Bhatia is a social worker and development professional with over 40 years of international experience. She's a founding member and volunteer of Bembala Foundation. Kiran was the founder director of Sanjeevani Society for Mental Health for 10 years. Kiran retired in 2013 as the regional gender advisor from United Nations Population Fund's Asia Pacific office. She currently offers technical guidance as a resource person to helplines in India and Nepal and gender-related research and policy advocacy in other Asian countries. Ms. Sumitra Acharya is a practicing lawyer who appears independently before trial courts and the High Court of Karnataka. She assists acid victims in these courts. She has worked as a research consultant at the Center for Women and Law for the Karnataka Health Promotion Trust project on empowering marginalized women through judicial trainings. She has done research work on reproductive rights of women with disabilities in selected districts of Karnataka and Orissa in 2017-18 of the research project undertaken by the Center for Women and the Law. Welcome to all the panelists. Just keeping in mind a few rules for the webinar. Please keep your microphones, devices on mute throughout the session. You can post questions to the panelists using the Q&A option and not the chat box. We will try to try our best to answer all the questions in the last 15 minutes of the session. A recorded version of the webinar will be available on Vidya's website. Last but not the least, we would love to hear from you. So reach out, you are not alone. Before I hand over the baton to our moderator, I would like to quote LaToya Jackson, who says, "It doesn't matter how rich or poor a person is, what gender or social class, or how much fame or education she possesses. Verbal, mental, and physical abuse can happen to anyone. It doesn't matter what a woman's ethnicity is, because the only distinguishing color of abuse is black and blue." Thank you everyone for joining once again. Over to you, Sashi.
Thank you, Kanas, for the introduction. Hello, everyone. Welcome to today's session. In the recent 90 days, while all of us have been chasing different numbers, stock market, COVID cases, every morning wake up to these graphs and talk about it. Our dear panelists here have been chasing a very different number, a much steeper graph, which is nothing but the number of women that were subjected to abuse during the same period. The next hour will be spent in understanding this omnipresent issue, violence against women. And what are some of the drivers or the root causes which is fueling this behavior and guiding the ever increasing number, and some ways to combat the same. All from a team of panelists, rather warriors that work across countries, over calls, on the ground, day in and day out, with women in distress, trying to calm them down, help them, show them the way to get relief in short term and long term, and to make the world a better and a safer place for all of us. Collectively, the panelists bring more than 10 decades of experience in this space. Thank you, Vidya, for choosing to host a knowledge series on this subject at such a critical moment, when we all need to know what's going around us and see how we can contribute to better the place. And thank you, audience, to the overwhelming response. We've had a great response, and we are very happy to know so many people are keen and want to participate in the subject area. I believe it's very important to understand violence against women in terms of power dynamics and social structures, rather than just one-off personal experiences. Having said that, I would welcome our first speaker, who's none other than Kiran, who by herself has close to 4 decades of work experience, providing services in the space across 24 countries. So there can't be a better person for us to paint a large canvas and show us what is the scene globally and specifically in India when we talk about violence against women. And also, Kiran, if you can walk us through what are some drivers which are fueling this numbers. And we all know it is not only a pandemic, it's an endemic, it's here to stay. But how can we, as a society, as a responsible citizen, control these numbers? And how can we help people who are subjected to abuse every day? Over to you, Kiran.
Thank you so much, Shashi. Namaskar to everyone. And thank you especially to Vidya for giving us this opportunity to share our experiences and to engage with you on this very, very complex and difficult subject. Shashi has given me a very tall order in a few minutes to cover such a vast range of issues. So I'll do my best to at least mention some of the key points. Pinaz, in her introduction, began by saying that we now have WHO presenting us with statistics about 1 in 3 women globally facing some form of violence. This is a difficult figure for us to quote with such confidence. And the reason we can do that is because over so many decades of tireless work, the women's movement in so many countries has worked against all odds to capture oral testimonies, to do research, to fight, to advocate, to negotiate, and to make sure that governments, international forums recognize violence against women in the public domain. Recognize that it is one of the worst human rights violations in the world today. If 1 in 3 women look around you, we're talking about such a large percentage of women and girls who, from the lifetime experience from 15 to 49 years, experience some form of violence or the other. This data comes from multiple national comparable studies, and therefore we can with confidence now take this evidence and move forward in challenging governments, challenging ourselves on why have we in the 21st century reached this situation where 50% of the world's population faces such an extensive range of violence. In India, just to give you more figures, the National Family Health Survey carried out in 2019, it's done regularly. It's the largest health survey done in our country. Also tells us that 30% of women in India in the age group of 15 to 49 experience some form of violence from the age of 15. That means many of the people who live around us, our family, in our workspace, our neighbors, women around us who we know, but we don't know about it because they often don't tell us. It's a silent pandemic. And despite all the progress that was mentioned in terms of laws and facilities, awareness raising, legal reform, it is a cancer that is growing. Unfortunately, many of us have a simplistic understanding of violence. We think it's a man beating his wife. Most people think violence is just domestic violence. Gussa aa gaya, thappad laga diya. Or it's just some form of regular abuse in the house. But research has taught us that there is so many forms of violence, apart from the obvious physical violence, which results in so many negative consequences, including death and injury. There's emotional violence, where a woman can be completely tormented psychologically, emotionally, destroying her self-esteem, destroying her confidence, pushing her to mental health challenges, and many other consequences. There's also economic violence, which we often don't see, but is ever present. Women denied their equal rights to resources, even their own salaries. Women denied access to information, to services. Women denied even food. In the lockdown in Nepal, in several other places, we've had women crying on the helpline saying, look, he's not giving me food and I can't go out of the house. So basic needs are denied. And access to basic economic requirements are denied. And that's a huge form of violence. There's also growing cyber crimes and cyber violence, which I'm sure you all have been reading about. Enormous amount of abuse, humiliation, and a huge impact on women because of cybercrime that is happening. Sexual violence and abuse is another massive area. We often hear of horrendous rape cases that you've been reading about, but there are other forms of sexual violence. Incest, as Pinaz mentioned, it's happening within your home from the very men who are to protect you. There's a rising rate of sexual abuse and violence of many different forms that women suffer. In addition to all these forms of violence, unfortunately, our society, like many countries, has a whole plethora of harmful practices. These are harmful practices that unfortunately have social sanction, that we've inherited over the generations and that fit within our very deeply patriarchal systems and structures in which we all function. Patriarchy has been around for centuries. It has commodified women's bodies. It has ensured subordination of women in almost every facet of their life, in their access to information, in their access to basic rights, in their access to survival and health, in their access to education, to equal opportunity for employment. Any facet of life you think of, women have been denied an equal chance purely because they are women. And while we have fantastic examples of women's progress, they are working to achieve this against the triple burden that they carry, the triple burden of work in the home, work in the community, and their reproductive responsibilities, which have, because of patriarchal beliefs, embedded this as their duty and their responsibility. So the harmful practices that contribute enormously to violence against women is, for example, the issue of sex selection, son preference, daughter aversion, the view that daughters are a burden, they're a pariah dhan. And so even in 1990, Amartya Sen I'm sure some of you have heard about this, wrote about the millions of women who are missing. Today, the figure is more manifold, doubled and quadrupled, and we have almost 40 million women who are missing from our statistics. We have a warped sex ratio, which is worse in some states but better in others. Why? Because while the daughter is still in the womb, she is killed. We don't want her because it's such a burden to protect her, to groom her, to pay for her dowry. And with this attitude, which is a core part of our patriarchal understanding, it is so much more difficult to women to fight for their rights and to seek support and to protest about a kind of violence they may face. 2 or 3 other key problems in our country is child marriage. We have an act, we have so much social reform, we have so many people in civil society working on it, but we still have one of the highest rates of child marriage in the region, with girls as old as 12, 13, married against the law by priests, by families, ruining her life forever because she gets into early pregnancy, unwanted abortions, is at the lowest pecking order in her family, and her education is ruined. It's taking her backwards many steps. We also have, unfortunately, the highest acid victims in the world, one of the highest. We have thousands of girls who in one moment have had acid thrown on them, their lives ruined forever. It takes about 14, 15 surgeries for one acid victim to recover because of one man's anger or jealousy. We also have honor killing, and we have maltreatment of widows. We have a lot of anger towards the female girl child at many levels, denial of education. These are all practices that contribute, that sanction different forms of violence and abuse. Many women are thrown out of their homes, divorced, beaten because they can't bear a male child when it has absolutely nothing to do with them. So with many of these practices that surround us, we really have to wonder, how is it that patriarchy, with all our intelligence, our research, with so many people educated, how is it that we're not able to fight some of these? Well, patriarchy is deep in the minds of men and women. It is so much in our subconscious, in our thinking, in our unwritten norms, that it's really very hard to break and change the way we think, change the way we behave, challenge some of the lessons we've learned from our elders. And one way to do that is for us to be much more aware of the consequences of violence. If you were to study some of the consequences, you would be horrified. The obvious ones you read about in the media: death, rape, the hundreds of burnt victims who are burnt due to absence of dowry and end up in the burnt wards of a hospital. But many others, women are maimed. They face so many orthopedic challenges because they're injured with broken bones. So many women suffer injury during pregnancy because they're kicked and beaten, lose the baby, have internal bleeding, have deformed children. Many of them have no access to their sexual reproductive rights and have repeated unwanted pregnancies, are suffering because of forced sex, vulnerability to HIV and other sexually transmitted diseases, and are also suffering long-term mental health consequences. We have a rising rate of suicide amongst women in India, more than men, and mostly in the young women, adult category, because they see no other recourse to help themselves. Suicide is a cry for help. And they just don't see a way out because they have such limited resources, limited information, and almost no support, as this is the expected behavior within the household. The health consequences of violence have finally, after years of work, helped us recognize that violence is a public health concern. Today, WHO and many governments have protocols and have norms which teach healthcare providers that they have to address violence as well, not just treat the injury, but look into the cause, ask the question, how did this happen? And they also have to be informed on how to ask and to make sure that this survivor in front of them is able to access appropriate, timely help, which can only happen immediately. So the public health domain has opened many doors and helped us realize that in the main services have a key role in being available to survivors of violence. Similarly, the police has a huge role in the way they respond to a survivor who approaches them with such difficulty, on how they respond and help her get to the right space, the right shelter, the right support systems. It's a huge challenge for for a woman, first of all, even to go to a police station and seek that kind of help. Another challenge is, where do women go? I want you to reflect for a moment the situation of a woman who is absolutely exhausted physically, emotionally, and really needs to look for another way out, because before she feels she's going to die or she's going to collapse. Where can she go? Imagine how traumatized she is in terms of thinking about seeking help. She has been conditioned to think of protecting her family, protect the honor of her family. She's terrified of stepping out because she has no resources. She has no one to turn to. She's not informed about her rights, about the laws. She is emotionally very shaken and doesn't know where to go. And I want to clarify that I'm not talking about poor and illiterate women. Many people tell us, oh, ye to gareeb auraton ke saath hota hai. This doesn't happen to educated, literate women. Our data has confirmed repeatedly that women from all backgrounds, regardless of their age, their class, their education level, their religion, their ethnicity, their location, all women are included in this 1 to 3 women who face violence in their lifetime. So we are not talking about a particular class of women. We are talking about women who are caught in the web of patriarchy and have very little recourse to help themselves. And that's why we need services like Bembala. That's why we need a network of support services, which is like a safety net, which are interdependent on each other, because a survivor needs many, many responses at the same time. But most of all, she needs a caring, confidential hand. She needs a space that is safe where she can go and she can share what she has not shared with anybody, where she can break down, calm down. And I'm sure my colleagues from Bembala will tell you much more about the amazing process which we have experienced repeatedly of how women are able to help themselves and seek support. I hope I've not crossed my time, Shashi.
Thank you.
I should stop now. Thank you so much. I'm happy to answer more questions afterwards.
Thank you, Kiran. Now that Kiran has done a brilliant job of painting a picture that has moved most of us, at least me, to tears and to the edge of my chair. And I could see Kiran choking in the end as well. Let's turn to Iram, who's been calming women in distress and guiding them to deal with various situations. To echo what Kiran said, the women are battling with, should I reach out? Where do I reach out to? Who do I reach out to? How do I go about identifying my support network? What kind of help can I expect from them? Is it even going to be easy for me to access them? These are some questions that a survivor has to deal with while enduring the violence and mustering strength to actually reach out. Iram, it will really help if you can tell us how Bembala, a support organization, helps women find answers to their fears and reach out for help. And once they reach out, how do you equip them and handhold them to work towards resolving the situation and getting relief? Given it's a complex issue, and I understand from the previous speaker that you need multiple agencies working together and collaborating effectively to be able to help women in the right way. What is your experience with such collaborations in your own work in India? Over to you.
Sure. Thank you so much, Sashi. Before I get into what we as Bembala do, I'm going to start off with an experience that I had early on in the journey of Bembala, where a lady once called us hysterically crying over the phone and saying that her husband had been violent towards her, and she really wanted to leave home and go back to her parents' house. She called up her father, and her father said कि हाँ बेटा तुम जरूर आ जाओ घर पर, बट ऐसा है ना कि दिवाली के बाद आना, क्योंकि अगर अभी तुम घर आ गई तो आस पड़ोस के लोग पूछ लेंगे कि दामाद कहाँ पर है, how come she's here alone. This was the experience of the woman who then reached out to Bembala. Bembala is a support center wherein we work with women and children experiencing abuse and violence of any form. And we are a volunteer-run organization operating out of Vaidehi Hospital since the last 1 year. Started off with this anecdote and this experience because, as we talk about that a woman who requires support, the first thought is that let me go over to my parents' house. And if because of the societal norms and conditioning, as Kiran has mentioned over here, if she's unable to reach out to them, she does require other support mechanisms that she can reach out to. So we at Bembala, we provide the first line of emotional support, which we refer to as befriending, which means being like a friend. And we provide that emotional support to the survivors who come to us. Mind you, we use the word survivors instead of victims, because these are those brave women who have actually extended themselves out, who have reached out for support. And so they are truly survivors. So we help the survivors, talk to them, provide them with that emotional support, and also help them explore the options through the various referral partners such as the police, the shelter homes, counselors, lawyers, vocational and skill development agencies and NGOs, in order to provide them that protection and empowerment. So what do we do at Bembala? See, a survivor will reach out to us, and a trained volunteer as a befriender, like a friend, will speak with the survivor. And using a survivor-centric approach, we will provide the care based on the wishes of the survivor. So we absolutely respect the woman's autonomy and her right to make a decision. It is really her choice as to what she wants to do. The idea at Bembala is to be able to listen to the survivor with empathy, without judgment, without any criticisms, to make sure that the woman does understand that it is really not her fault, that she is not to be blamed, that she does not deserve the abusive treatment that has been meted towards her. Once she understands that this is not her fault and she is not to be blamed for the behavior of the abuser, we also work with instilling a sense of confidence in her that she's really not alone, that we are there to support, and that there are other women who have gone through situations such as these and have been able to find out options and explore options which have then enabled them to have a better quality of life. So using our support mechanisms that we have in terms of, like I said, the referral network, the police, the shelters, the lawyers, and other counseling agencies, we provide this kind of support to the woman. A part of the process of the emotional support is also to make sure that she's safe. And this we do by a process called as safety planning, wherein we discuss the plans with the survivor to make sure that she is able to protect herself from further harm if violence has to occur again, or in the event that she wants to leave home. Safety plan entails things like we will advise the woman. A very simple example, a woman with long hair, we might even tell her that make sure that she ties her hair so that the abuser is not using the hair to pull her and to injure her in any manner, not to wear long earrings, make sure to pack all her belongings and keep them in one place, her cash, jewelry, legal documents, checkbooks, ATM cards, etc., so that just in case she has to leave home, she can do so very quickly with all her belongings, to ensure that any harmful objects such as scissors or knives, they are kept out of reach of the spouse, to make sure that trusted numbers of friends and family members are either set up on speed dial setup, or that they're easily available. If there are children involved, to make sure that she is able to guide the children to not intervene when the active violence is happening, just so that the children are safeguarded, but also to talk to the children that is there a code word that she can use so that the kids can then very quickly approach a trusted neighbor or a friend, or call a neighbor or a friend for help. Also to prepare a safe place at home where she and her children can she can lock herself till help arrives. To keep all the emergency numbers handy, there are a number of helplines that we have. She can dial 100 for the police to immediately come. And Bembala's experience during the period of lockdown has been that the police help has arrived within a span of 10 to 15 minutes. Shelters have not been available during the period of lockdown, but the police has arrived within a span of 10 to 15 minutes, as I said, and have helped to take the woman over to a friend's place or a relative's place in order to ensure her safety. In some cases, the husband has also been asked to leave the home if the safety of the woman is compromised, or we are not sure how safe she would be being under the same roof as the spouse. So there are a number of helpline numbers. 181 is another number that the women can call. We also have a Bembala helpline number that has been functioning during the period of lockdown. And it's interesting to note that a trivia over here for all of you, that only 37% of women in India have access to phone. And the perpetrator or the abuser has been home 24/7 during the period of lockdown, which has really made it very difficult for women and children to reach out for help. And in spite of that, the number of calls significantly went up even on our helpline during the 3rd and 4th week of the lockdown. So we can only imagine from this and extrapolate that how much abuse has been happening out there, that women have been locking themselves up in the bathroom and sending us WhatsApp messages, or making sure that or calling us and reaching out for help. But like we said, that all of this can only happen if there is an ecosystem of all the referral partners, stakeholders working hand in hand, providing that support to the women. So we have been receiving calls pan-India, basically, and what we have done is provided emotional support on our helpline number over the phone, and then helped the women get in touch with the NGOs in those cities, wherein then the NGOs have helped the woman to get in touch with the local police or the shelter place, if at all that's been a possibility, because even that has been extremely difficult during the period of lockdown. So this is the kind of support that we do provide in the here and now. But you know what, the violence against women is basically, to end the violence against women is a long journey, and we have many miles to go before we sleep, so to speak. So we are also very actively involved and working with prevention. And what we do for prevention is we have a number of programs, one of them being Bol Sakhi. So Bol Sakhi is a program which means speak friend, wherein a survivor talks to a group of women across the strata of the society, talks to women and shares her journey along with them, telling them what she's been through and how she got herself out of that abusive situation. Talks to the women about their rights, talks to them about the various kinds of abuse and violence, because as mentioned earlier, typically physical abuse is considered as abuse, but other forms of abuse, emotional abuse, financial abuse, sexual abuse, this is really not considered as any form of violence or abuse. So we educate the women around that. And our Bol Sakhi, I would love to give credit over here to Bol Sakhi, which has been inspired from Marmaras, which were first conducted by another stellar NGO, Vimochna, who's been working in this field for 40 plus years. So through our Bol Sakhis, we have reached out to 200 plus women in a span of a year and spoken to them. Just talking to women is not enough. So what we've also done is we have conducted a number of awareness sessions, both for men and women. We've also reached out to with the young boys and girls who are going to be the men and women of tomorrow, wanting to educate them and sensitize them about the role that gender plays, and this pattern of abuse, and what is it that they can do, and how can they change their mindsets so that they can be better responsible citizens of tomorrow. So it's really important to understand that through prevention, we want to highlight the significance of physical and mental well-being. So we, as Bembala, we work in the here and now, and we also provide that support wherein we are working towards prevention of violence against women. So I hope I've answered everything. Sashi, I'm not sure, but I'll be available in the Q&A to come back and answer, because there's just so much that that we need to share and talk about. So thank you very much. And
Thank you.
yeah.
That was very insightful for somebody who wants to reach out. What is the process? And I'm sure it's very comforting for someone who's listening to that in this audience pool, that they can go back and, tell the ladies around who needs help as well.
Yes.
Now, there will be a lot of questions in your area, I know for sure. So we'll get to that during Q&A.
Sure.
And
Sure. Thank you.
for the participants, keep posting your questions. We are noting them down, so we will get to it in the end. Now we'll move on to Sumitra Acharya, who's been also an extended member in the referral network of Bembala. And she has worked with several cases since the initiation of Bembala. Sumitra.
Yeah, sorry, there was a call and it got disconnected. That is why. Okay. So
can you share with us the provisions in law for violence against women, more specifically domestic violence, in the interest of time, and some challenges common folks face in going down the legal path?
Okay. Thank you for this opportunity. So to start with, when it comes to law, we already, Kiran and Yuram have already spoken a lot about it. But I would like to say that we have this law of domestic violence especially applies to all women, in the sense daughters and grandmothers, aunts and wife, and those who living in the relationship in the nature of marriage. So, and the act focus upon protecting these women. That is the main focus of the law. And then we have, in 2013, we have come up with new laws to punish the rapists, and we have come out with new definition of rape, and also the new definition of acid attack, and also punishment for acid attack especially. So these kind of new spectrum was added to the law. But when we look into the applicability of the legislation, we can see that a lot of women who come to access these legislations with the hope of getting remedies for their quite often feel very dejected or not gaining much support, because most of the time women survivors of violence in general, I have worked for rape survivors, acid attack survivors, and domestic violence survivors. What I have seen is that they are not emotionally, they are not at all supported. There is no agency that works closely with any lawyer's office or any court rooms or anywhere. So we ourselves have to at times listen to them many times and prepare them to decide what is it that she wants to do, because we have a lot of legislations which protects, which safeguards the interest of women, but sometimes the consequences may not be the same. The woman trying to take police help, or the woman trying to take the help of the domestic violence law just to stop the violence which she is facing, may end up being told to take up divorce as a part of settlement deal and not to live together, wherein majority of women do not want that. Divorce is not something which they look for when they are facing violence. They just want to stop the violence, and exactly that's the point why we have this legislation which attempts to protect women, especially their constitutional rights as well, and tries to stop every kind of violence which she may go through in the she may go through in the home. So, but then the fact that she stepped into the police station, the fact that woman has taken the resort to the domestic violence law, at times pushes her back from any kind of deal, because the violator will often refuse to amicably settle the matter or stop the violence, or his only point is, I don't want her because she has insulted me by going through court. This kind of thinking is still there, where women find it very difficult to use the legislation. So while a lot of women choose what they want to do, whether they want to file FIR or not, whether they want to use domestic violence law or divorce law or economic support, what is it? But meanwhile, it becomes very difficult for them to keep the family together. So this is possible only if a lot of NGOs come in and then give kind of family counseling and then try to make understand that it is a collective responsibility that we remove the violence out of homes. So this is where this law may not work, but then the collective support which is required. And in acid attack survivor cases, we can see that especially when they are not aware of any law or their rights, or even to lead evidence, they were not sure what to say, and there is so much fear factor. They have never seen the courtroom before, and there is no one, and especially the public prosecutor will be helping these women, but they are so much occupied with their lot of other work. It becomes impossible for her to get over the fear and depose before the court accurately. And so that is wherein I most of the time try to help and try to bring her strength within her, and then make her feel comfortable and take her before the court at least prior to her evidence, and make her feel comfortable with the courtroom surroundings. It is not the same. And so this kind of help which a lot of women need, but we lack extensively. That is what I see. And even in the cases of rape survivors, I have seen that, especially in case of if a woman is disabled and she gets raped, and then the level of support she needs is more than beyond anyone's imagination, and then to get that all together becomes a Herculean task. But nevertheless, we do not have that kind of networking among the lawyers, because most of us work on our own, and then so it becomes then important that to give complete justice to women, we have to network and connect to the psychologist, to the NGO, to the public prosecutor, to the district legal service authority, to the police, to the medical paralegal workers, or to the doctors. Unless and until we do that and have a good networking system, it becomes impossible to help the woman to stand courageously and continue with her fight against violence, any kind of violence. It is very important. Now we have one-stop crisis center where a lot of training has been given to to the staff there. So this kind of support system is most important than just the law, wherein even though we have even the law against sexual harassment, which has 2013 amendment has brought in that, and also protection against disrobing women or voyeurism or the stalking. So all these sections, new sections have been added to protect the woman from even violence-based, especially using the digital technologies. So these cyber crimes are most challenging ones, which nowadays the younger generation is facing, wherein they will always have a threat of their pictures or their private pictures being used or being disseminated in a larger audience, to larger spectators, and causing them a lot of humiliation and these things. And they have to go for cyber police, and that kind of support also we have to give to women. So this is the collective work. I hope all of us are together in this struggle to help the women. Thank you so much for this opportunity.
Thank you, Sumitra. Dr. Iram, who's been working with Bembala, and she's a founding member as well, has been kind enough to actually bring in one of our survivors to have a conversation with us. We cannot thank her enough for not only being brave and taking control of the situation and working with Bembala and seeing a solution through, but also willing to come here and have a conversation with us all to help inspire and instill faith in the system and the support network. Over to you, Iram.
Yes, I would like to have introduce all of you to this one such strong woman who is here to share with us her journey filled with varied emotions, a woman who finally decided to reach out and to break the silence.
Okay. Hi everyone. So I'll start from beginning what I went through and how I tackled with everything. So I actually started facing abuse in my marriage right from the beginning, and I was not able to understand why I'm being beaten and why I'm being treated like this. Uh, and it was too much difficult for me to understand what was happening to me, and it even made me suicidal. It took me to a point where I started getting suicidal, and every time it used to happen, I used to justify. I used to tell myself, uh, justify his behavior towards me by thinking like. Uh, things like I should घर की बात घर में रहनी चाहिए या भाई बहन भी आपस में लड़ते हैं and at times I used to blame myself only for his beating. I used to feel I'm the one who's to be blamed because he's beating me, and I used to take all those beatings without reaching out to anyone, not even my parents. And I had a very happy childhood, and right after marriage when I started facing all these things, I was in a totally different world where I was not able to reach out to anyone and had to face so many things which were far from my understanding. So in these things continued for a few years, but then I I started to change myself. I started change myself to his liking, so that I started thinking maybe if I change myself the way he likes, all this will stop. But somehow it it reduced, but it never stopped because there would be small trigger points. Sometimes even if I used to forget his birth, uh, I can't tell all the situations, but it would be as silly as or as small as when I forgot to wish his brother on his birthday, and it was a trigger for him to beat me. So it was too difficult for me to understand why someone has to resort to violence for something like this. And it was my mistake that I never thought about reaching out to anyone, not even my parents, even though I know they would have understood my situation. A lot many females I know don't have that liberty where they know that someone is ready to understand them. But in my case, I knew my parents would understand me, but still I didn't reach out to them. And then over the years, after my son was born, again the intensity increased, uh, of the beatings. It was too much for me, and there was not only domestic violence. There was not only physical, that it was like emotionally, mentally. My confidence, my everything went down. I was too much, I became some other person, like one who was before marriage and after marriage. Like, it was like two different persons. Even my friends started telling me, Ki, what has happened to you? But I couldn't tell anyone what was happening to me inside. And last year, actually last year, the violence increased, where I was like subjected to situations where I could have died. And it became too much for me to handle the situations and handle everything alone. And that was the point when I decided that I have to reach out to someone, otherwise I won't be able to survive even for my son. Because so then through one of my WhatsApp groups, I came to know about Bembala, and I and luckily for me, they are in Vedi Hospital, Bangalore. It was near my home. If it would have been far, maybe I would have again been given a thought whether I should reach out to them or not. But I reached out. Finally, I reached out because, and when I went there, the Bembala volunteers were too helpful. They helped me understand. They listened to me, which through all these years, more than 10 years, I had never told anyone anything what I was going through. And finally, when someone listened to me, it was that listening only was. It gave me so much strength that yeah, just because I was able to tell my story to someone, it made me relax, and it made me understand that how I can move forward in life, because they gave me all the medical support. They helped me to understand what I should be doing going forward, how I should be. Like, I didn't know about all these domestic violence laws that are there. I was not aware of that there are laws to protect women, and they helped me understand that I don't need to go through this abuse daily. There, I should reach out, because for me, I've always been a person who always thought कि घर की बात को घर के बाहर जाने ही नहीं देना है, चाहे कुछ भी हो जाए. And especially once my son was born, I was like, I have to. Uh, Even after facing all the violence, I used to protect my husband just because he was my son's father. So that thinking, I don't know whether it's right or wrong, but I used to think like that only, and that's why I never used to think about going to police or reaching out to anyone against him. Uh, so coming finally, when I reached a situation where his beatings and everything went out of like they they it was like if he's not going to stop, something is going to happen to me. And when I thought he would not go to any further level down, he even sexually abused me. So I think I am, sometimes I think whether I am to blame, because I was taking all those abuse, and I shouldn't have I shouldn't have allowed anyone to do all those things to myself. But uh, that time in my situation, my confidence and everything was so low that I don't know whether I would have reacted any other way. Only thing is, but after I left my home, and after uh, it was like I have come out from some hell. And then when I started telling my friends, my family, my parents, everything that happened to me, I realized that they were there to support me always. It was just me who was not ready to take that support. When I reached Bembala, I found so many uh, volunteers who were ready to listen to me. They told me what all the things I need to do uh, going forward, my documents and all. I never knew that they are my right and I should have them with me. My husband had all those documents, and sometimes when you are put through these situations, you are told to go out of your home. I was asked to leave my home with 2 bags, and if I had not kept my documents with me, I don't know how would I have survived the life afterwards with my son. So these all things we don't know, but when we reach out to someone who's there to guide us, it will help us understand what are our rights, and what are how can we use them so that our life is better. And all after all these years, I have only understood one thing, that as women we need to stand up for ourselves, and we need to stand on our feet, no matter what. No matter what situation, I gave up on all my dreams just to save the marriage, but it is not worth it if you can't love yourself. So start loving yourself and stand on your own feet. Never depend on anyone, never, for especially financially, because then people start using you in the way they want to use you. That's the only thing I want to tell. Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for sharing.
There are so many people who are posting kudos to you for being brave, for being able to stand up for yourself, and for being even more brave to come here in front of so many audience and to share your story and inspire them and say, reach out, take help, stand up for yourself. And that's the only way you can save yourself and have peace. Thank you so much once again.
Yeah, Shashi, just wanted to add that, really hats off to you, to our amazingly brave woman who has just come here today and shared her story with us, because it takes also a lot of courage to revisit the trauma. It's not easy sharing it in front of everyone. So thank you so much. Really appreciate you and wish you a happy, peaceful life ahead.
Thank you. Thanks a lot. No, I really wanted to share because what I have gone through, I don't want anyone to go through. And I wish just people reach out when they have to reach out, because I didn't.
Thank you, dear. Yes, so do not wait. Reach out before it's too late and stand up for yourself. Do not expect somebody else to come and tell you that. Thanks for that message. Thank you, panelists, for the most insightful session. I'm sure every one of us attending the session is willing and wanting to pledge that we will reach out and be that force that will fight this pandemic, which hurts more than any other disease. We all need to get together and do our little bits to bring about a systemic and a long-lasting change, and I believe together we can. On a lighter note, it's time for us to break the silence and begin the chatter as we move on to the Q&A segment of the session. And we have received so far 30 questions. And I have written down some of them, and there are more coming in. We have reached the 5 o'clock, and I'm hoping if you would have some patience, we will run through 10-12 minutes of Q&A, because there are some very relevant questions. I'm going to leave the questions open to the panel. Whoever wants to chime in, please do so. How do you think we can bring about a systemic change, given that violence against women is so prevalent across the globe? Who are some actors we need to start engaging with to bring about the change?
Shall I do that, or Iram, would you like to?
Just of time, just go ahead. Whoever.
So I think that's a really good question, and I can see the questions coming. And I think a lot of answers have been given to us by a wonderful survivor who shared her personal story. From that story and from what Iram and I shared, it's clear that we need 1,000 flowers to bloom. There's not one step, there's not one agency, there's not one actor. This has to be everybody's business. We are talking about a social transformation. We're talking about changing the way we think, the way we behave, our whole attitude towards women, and how much we need to relearn how to look at them as equal citizens, as equal partners. We need women to be so much more informed, but also men. And I wanted to share that studies done on violence have shown that boys who grew up in violent homes are 4 times as likely to grow up to be perpetrators. And so Ira mentioned it, but the investment in schools, and I think for Vidya, this is so important because they have such a fantastic outreach. The possibility of helping children in a structured, constructive way to rethink how to be a responsible human being and how to respect women. There are amazing strategies we have all over the world of working with sports coaches who boys respect so much, of reorienting teachers, because we all are filled with these biases within ourselves. We've grown up in the same patriarchal structures, men and women. And many of these biases are not conscious. They come out when in a situation, in an experience. And so as men and women, we can do a lot to rethink some of the assumptions we have, to educate ourselves with information. And we saw the examples of how information makes a massive difference on learning about laws, on understanding our rights, and on learning how to negotiate. When you have information, you have power, and you can then reach out and not stop yourself from finding out more. And we have such wonderful examples today. Key actors, I think, as I said, parents, teachers are the closest to the ground. But the most important key actor is we ourselves, in our own families, with our own children, with our own loved ones, in our workplaces, not standing by. We cannot be bystanders anymore. Each one of us has a responsibility. Thank you.
So taking off that, how does one play a key role in prevention and or lowering such occurrences in and around themselves? Talking about bystanders and talking about Bolsaki and the volunteering opportunities. There are questions around how can they be those volunteers who can reach out. So I guess the question is to Ira.
Yeah. So in terms of volunteering with Bembala, absolutely, please. You've seen our number, feel free to call us, give us a call, because there are abundant volunteering opportunities, right from being a befriender to helping us with the outreach, to helping us with the social media, and many, many more. We are also have all plans of expansion of our helplines. So please reach out to us. Bystanders, very interesting, right? So that's what I would like to say, Kiranji, absolutely. Instead of being bystanders, it's time that we all awaken and become upstanders. And it starts, yes, of course, from the parents and all of us and the families, to every stakeholder who's out there, to even the local chai walas and the vendors and the ones who are selling flowers and the sabzi walas on the streets. And I believe we have a Durga Foundation here in Bangalore who's doing an amazing work in terms of adopting streets. Yes. And you know what, it's almost like a dream wherein if everyone on the street, right, took that responsibility, how dare a woman be eve teased or be molested or experience abuse or violence of any form. So it's up to all of us to actually stand up right now, reach out, absolutely break the silence.
Perfect. That answers the other question. If someone is interested in creating a local support group for women, how do they go about it? I guess you named Durga, so they can look them up and figure out.
Yes.
There were a lot of specific questions to Dr. Iram. So how can we change the mindset? I'll read all the 4 or 5 questions and then you can take it all together. Dr. Iram, how can we change the mindset of the society that is only known to be patriarchal? The next question for Dr.
That's a toughie, right? That's what we're all working towards.
Is marital rape treated as domestic violence? I guess Sumitra or Iram, but it's asked, posted for Iram.
Sumitra, you want to take a shot at that in terms of the legalities? But definitely under the domestic violence, can we say that it is, it is considered as sexual violence? Because if the woman has not given her consent, then definitely it's a form of sexual abuse. And I'll leave it for Sumitra to answer the legal aspect of it. Sumitra, we can't hear you.
Can you unmute yourself?
Sorry. So no, marital rape is something which we have been trying to get it recognized and considered as an offense, which so far we have not done that. But as Iram rightly said, yes, it is considered as a sexual abuse in a domestic relationship. So in that way we can bring in, but the thing is, the main struggle is to punish someone as a criminal under the Indian Penal Code. That kind of power women does not have as of now. We can only call it as a sexual abuse under the Domestic Violence Act, but it is some entry to the legal domain to recognize that this kind of violence does happen, and then it needs a recognition. And it's a high time that we also look into the marital rape also as a rape in coming days. Thank you.
Thank you. Since you're unmuted, Sumitra, one more question for you. What are some special provisions in the legal and law enforcement systems that will serve as a safety net for women from further attack when they decide to reach out and take control? Hiram, if you want to take it up between the two of you.
Sorry, could you repeat the question, Sashi, then?
What are some special provisions in the legal and law enforcement systems that will serve as a safety net for women from further attack when they decide to reach out and take control of their situation? So when they approach, take the legal route, or they file a case in the police station, are they at more risk? And is there anything in the law that will give them a safety net through that journey?
Yes. Shall I add
Yes,
some 2 lines?
Yes.
Yeah. See, one thing is there are protection officers or NGOs who are considered as service providers whom one can reach if it is about domestic violence. Or in any other case, see, someone wants to prevent the violence, one can also enter the courtroom and ask for injunction orders or stay orders to prevent to stop the violence. That we call it as a protection orders. So one can get the protection orders, even stop someone else from hitting or throwing one out of the house or entering the office premises and causing a lot of problem in the workplace, or not letting go to the office, or using one's own income and things like that. So even one can get some interim order, like a stay order or injunction orders to protect oneself. So that provision is of course there within the law, but they have to enter the courtroom. Without entering the courtroom, I think one have to use the police or the NGO service providers, protection officers, and go for some counseling and things like that. Thank you.
Thank you, Sumitra.
And also what a lot of the NGOs, just to add on to what Sumitra is saying in terms of course, when you reach out to the police, so some good work that's happening in the area is, that police has also been receiving trainings in terms of how to speak with women when they come to the police station, how to speak with a survivor and not just kind of, shoo them away by saying, okay, this is, a family matter. So police also, we've been seeing, has been taking this very seriously. And so the women then feels very confident in approaching the police station.
Brilliant. Now, back to you, Hiram. What are some precautions that someone with disability should take beyond what you said? You said a few things in your speech. So this is somebody asking with disability. Is there anything more that they should?
So in terms of someone with disability who's being abused, absolutely. I mean, the safety plans, as we discussed, that goes to stay. I mean, that's what it is, that they need to take all those precautions. At the same time, as we have been stressing on that please reach out, and that there are laws to protect the person. So do not hesitate in terms of receiving help from an NGO or directly going to a police station and reporting and filing for a complaint in some manner.
What are some good websites and books to understand violence-related law?
I would suggest there are very good movies, in fact, one needs to watch to understand, starting from Provoked, Lajja, Thappad, the recent one.
Thappad,
all
yes.
These movies will really give great sense of the domestic violence and what women go through. Books, anyway, in Google, you get a lot of things, but then I think movies are the best.
Can I add to that?
Yes.
I think there's some wonderful literature being developed by women activists in India. Kamla Bhasin is an example where information has been simplified, because one problem is it's so technical. People are scared to read it. It's written for yourself and not for an external audience. But I think now we have a range of literature which demystifies laws, which demystifies your rights, and informs you in a simplistic way so that it can reach a wider audience to understand. And I think one thing we can do is, for Vidya especially, is to share some of this information with your teachers, with your trainers, because it's very easy to absorb and can also be used in classrooms. There's also a program called GEMS, which has really looked at prevention and looked at reaching information to adolescent boys and girls in schools, where it breaks down gender stereotypes, and it through constructive game and learning in a longish process in their routine learning, they understand about, as I said earlier, rethinking assumptions and also rights of boys and girls and adult men and women within the Constitution, as Sumitra was saying.
There are around 28 more questions. So what we are going to do in the interest of time, because we are coming close to the end of session, we are going to ask the panelists to share their views against each of the questions, and we will email it to all the participants.
Okay.
I'm hoping that is so best. So having said that, there's one question from a Vidya team member, and I think this is going to Rashmi. Ma'am, as a Vidya team member, would like to know what is Vidya's long-term plan in empowering women to deal with this problem, such as violence, beyond our existing economic empowerment programs. So, good segue, handing over to you, Rashmi. You can answer the question and also conclude the session. You have to unmute.
Thank you so much, wonderful, wonderful panelists, for the most inspiration and the most motivational session we've had in a long time. And I think I'll just thank you first, Kiran, Dr. Iram, Sumitra, and Anamika, for really reaching out, opening our minds and guiding us and giving us the courage and the hope to deal with the challenges of abuse and domestic violence. We really appreciate your years of work that you've put in and what you're sharing is, and one session isn't enough, so we'll have to get you back to do another session to take this forward. But more than anything else, Shashi, what we were sharing is that I think the time has come, like you say, that for us to just join hands with Bembala and work together towards creating a much safer net for our women, for our girls, for our youth, for everybody. And I think right away, we will not waste any time. As you know, with the pandemic, a lot of suffering is going on, like we shared. And with this lockdown, and we said it's a silent pandemic. So almost soon after, maybe next week itself, we would love you to come to Vidya, connect with all our teachers through Zoom, through any other way, and let's spread the awareness of what you already shared, as well as make sure that we can get a professional training from you, because we do work in education and skill training and empowerment. But there are so many other areas which you cannot touch where you have the profession, and we would like to partner with you in that. So we will get into this right away and join hands with you. And let's see how we can, all our future cases, many come to us of abuse and violence. Many have been Vidya, in all the Vidyas across India. And we also partner with other groups across, but we will be delighted to partner with Bembala and take you, maybe one of you even on our board. So let's work on that together. But there's so many wonderful takeaways from this fantastic session. And Kiran, it was amazing to share the statistics that you did that spurs us into action. Also to learn that we should not be bystanders anymore. We should be the upstanders in case of any domestic violence. And also the importance of nipping things in the bud, that we don't delay. And also building gender equality into our curriculum and our life skill training, which we already have, but we'll have to take your help to create more. Just to share with you, Kiran is my younger sister. So I've seen her work in 40 years, but never heard her like this, or being a real sister. Dr. Iram, it was so amazing to hear you, because what we learned from you is the importance to muster strength, to take action. And this will bring relief, because prevention, as you say, is better than cure. And it was amazing to have the strong voice of Anamika. It was such a blessing to hear you, so honest and so courageous. And I'm sure even with what we heard today, which is going to be shared across the world, you will give confidence to so many more Anamikas who will come forward and take help because of what you shared. Absolutely. So thank you, Anamika. Even I moved. So we would love you, Dr. Iram, to come and hold a session with us and guide us to make sure that we can start right away with you.
Sure.
So Mitra, we learned from you that self-protection comes first before we focus on the punishment for the abuser, right? So also that the legal path is very difficult and long, and we need to go to the end and not give up. We look forward to your guidance as well on legal advice for Vidya and its proceedings. So there are hundreds.
Thank you. I would love to work together.
We will not be able to finish them, and we will definitely share them with you. And if participants have more, we're all connected on email, and we're all connected to our participants. So you'll be flooded by, and we'll be delighted if you can answer those. But I want to thank Pinaz for the introductory session, and Shashi for the wonderful, outstanding moderation that you did, and for all the coordination and planning to make this a life-changing session for all of us. So this session is recorded, and as Pinaz shared, that it will be available on the YouTube link, and you could share it with all those who have missed it today. And I'm sure I'm going to see it another 3-4 times just to learn more from what you all shared. So on behalf of the Vidya family, I thank all of you profusely. Also our participants who are part of this webinar, and we have almost 250 participants in this webinar today. And we will, as we said, pass the questions on, and you can get your questions answered. We also have you can also volunteer at Vidya, where we invite volunteers and mentors to join us to deal with our everyday needs. And I think it's the love and the sharing of a volunteer that really transforms lives. So I take this opportunity to also invite you for our very special webinar, which is next week. It's a fireside chat with Mr. N.R. Narayan Murthy, CEO and Chief Mentor of Infosys, and in conversation with Professor Ashok Misra and the children of Vidya, with the topic, Building a Respected and Successful India. This is on Saturday, the 13th of June at 7:30 p.m. to 9 p.m. And we are honored to have Mr. Narayan Murthy share his thoughts and inspire our children and all of us. So please do register for that webinar and be with us for this very special live session with a great son of India. We also request you to visit our website, the Vidya website, which is vidya-india.org, and learn more about our work. We are also looking for donations, generous donations towards the COVID Relief Fund, which supports 15,000 children, youth, and women, which are enrolled in our programs today. So in my many years of grassroots work, I have learned so much, especially from the indomitable spirit of women. From our communities. No matter what the challenges they have, what life throws at them, they're able to rise with confidence, with grit, with strength, with grace. And what they really need is what we try to provide them is a base education, strengthen themselves, provide them guidance, love, and moral support. So to end, I'll just share a very simple quote with all of you. Is of course, when we say, when women prosper, countries prosper. And they say, the circle of women around us weave invisible nets of love that carry us through when we are weak and sing with us when we are strong. We thank you all for being with us today, and I look forward to seeing you next week. Thank you all. Namaskar.
Thank you.
Thanks.